My grandson threw my cane into the middle of the road and said, "If you make it back alive, you get coffee." 3 days later, his university fund was empty, and I was gone. I never thought I'd reach a point where I'd walk away from my own family. But looking back, that moment on the busy street outside my son's house was when something inside me finally broke. It wasn't just the humiliation of standing there, my 73-year-old legs trembling as cars whizzed past my walking cane. It was the laughter, my son David and his wife Margaret joining in with Tyler as they watched me struggle. "Mom, he's just joking around," David called out, barely containing his amusement. "Don't be so sensitive." A kind stranger retrieved my cane, his face a mask of concern and confusion. "Are you okay, ma'am? Is that your family?" I couldn't answer him. The shame burned too deeply. Instead, I clutched my cane and made my way back to them, my dignity in tatters. "See? You made it." Tyler, my 18-year-old grandson, slapped me. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching, on the back hard enough to make me stumble. Now you've earned your coffee. This cruel incident happened on what should have been a joyous occasion, the day I'd finally agreed to sell my home and move in with David's family. After 3 years of their persistent persuasion following my husband George's death, I'd finally relented. They had insisted it was for my own good, that I shouldn't be alone in that big old house, that they wanted me close to family. What I didn't realize then was that they wanted me close to my money, not me. The gathering that day included our extended family, my brother-in-law Frank and his wife, my niece Emma and her husband, even some of David and Margaret's friends. They were all there to celebrate my wise decision to move in with my son. Not one of them intervened when Tyler threw my cane. Not one voice was raised in my defense. Back at the house, as everyone chatted over coffee and cake, I sat quietly. In the corner, the reality of my situation finally sinking in. I wasn't moving in with family who loved me. I was surrendering my independence to people who saw me as nothing more than an asset. "You're awfully quiet, Mom," David said, sliding into the chair beside me. His tone was light, but his eyes were calculating. "Having second thoughts?" "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Well, don't worry about a thing. We'll take care of everything." He patted my hand. "Margaret's already picked out new furniture for your room. Smaller pieces, of course. We'll need to do something with all that clutter from your house." My clutter included family heirlooms, George's beloved book collection, and the antique furniture we'd spent decades collecting together. "And we've been thinking," he continued, lowering his voice, "it might make sense to add Margaret's name to your accounts. Just for convenience, you understand. So we can help manage things." I nodded absently, but something cold had settled in my chest. This wasn't the first time they'd brought up my finances. Since George died, there had been countless suggestions about my money. Investments David thought I should make in his business ventures, expenses he felt I should cover, Tyler's private school, their family vacations, and increasingly, pressure to grant them access to my accounts. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, my niece Emma lingered. Emma was my sister-in-law's daughter, always a sweet girl, though we hadn't been close in recent years. "Aunt Judith," she said softly, taking my hands in hers. "Are you sure about this move? You know, if you need anything at all, you can call me." There was something in her eyes. Concern, perhaps even warning. But before I could respond, Margaret appeared at my side. "Emma, darling, so good of you to come," she said, her arms slipping possessively around my shoulders. "We're going to take such good care of Judith, don't you worry." Emma's smile tightened. "I'm sure you will," she said, but her eyes never left mine. "Remember what I said, Aunt Judith. Anytime." After she left, Margaret's grip on my shoulder tightened painfully. "That girl has always been jealous of your relationship with David," she said. I wouldn't put too much stock in whatever she was whispering about. That night, in the guest room that would soon be my permanent space, a room half the size of my current bedroom, with no space for my books or my sewing table, I sat on the edge of the bed and wept silently. The walls felt like they were closing in around me. The sounds of David and Margaret talking in low voices downstairs made me feel like a child eavesdropping on adults. I thought about George and what he would say if he could see me now. George, who had always handled our finances with such care, who had left everything meticulously organized for me. "Don't let anyone push you around, Judy," he'd always said. Not even our own kids. I hadn't listened. After he died, the grief had been so overwhelming that I'd let David step in to help with paperwork and bills. Gradually, he'd taken over more and more. I'd let it happen, grateful at first for the support, then too ashamed to admit I'd lost control. Now here I was, about to surrender the last of my independence. I thought about Tyler throwing my cane into traffic, about the laughter, about the stranger's kindness. I thought about Emma's worried eyes and whispered offer of help. Something shifted inside me. A quiet voice, perhaps my own, perhaps George's, whispered, "This isn't right. You know this isn't right." I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the moon move across the sky. By morning, I hadn't made any grand decisions, but a seed of resistance had been planted. I wasn't ready to give up just yet. What I didn't know then was that this resistance would grow, day by day, as I began to see more clearly the web of manipulation that had been woven around me. I didn't know that within 3 days I would make a decision that would change everything. All I knew, as I watched the sunrise from my soon-to-be permanent cage, was that for the first time since George died, I felt something other than grief and confusion. I felt angry. The morning after the party, I returned to my own home, the house where George and I had spent 47 years together. I had 2 weeks before the sale would be finalized, 2 weeks of freedom before moving in with David and his family, permanently. As I unlocked the door, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. My house wasn't large or fancy, but it was mine, filled with memories in every corner. The thought of leaving it made my chest tighten. I moved through the room slowly, touching the furniture George had lovingly restored, the quilt my mother had made for our wedding, the photographs chronicling our life together. It all felt more precious now that I was about to lose it. In George's study, everything remained untouched since his heart attack 3 years ago. His reading glasses still perched on top of an open book, his favorite pen lying beside his leather journal. I hadn't been able to change anything after he died. David had called it unhealthy and living in the past. I sat in George's chair and opened the bottom drawer of his desk where he kept important papers. The folder with our financial documents was missing. I frowned, trying to remember when I'd last seen it. Had David taken it? He'd offered to sort through Dad's paperwork shortly after the funeral, and I'd been too numb with grief to question him. My unease grew as I searched other drawers, finding more gaps where important documents should have been. Our will, property deeds, insurance policies, all gone. Had I really been so distracted by grief that I hadn't noticed? With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and called our longtime bank. After verifying my identity, I asked about the balance in our main account. "Mrs. Harmon, your primary checking account currently has a balance of $4,286.42, as the teller informed me." That couldn't be right. There should have been well over $50,000. Money from George's life insurance that I'd set aside for property taxes and home repairs. And the savings account? My voice shook. That account shows a current balance of $12,329.17. My head spun. Our savings had held over $100,000 3 years ago. "Could you tell me about the recent withdrawals, please?" The teller hesitated. "It appears there have been regular transfers to another account over the past 3 years, most ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 monthly." "What account? I didn't authorize any transfers." Another pause. "Mrs. Harmon, these transfers were authorized using your online banking credentials. The account they're going to is a joint account under the names of David and Margaret Harmon." The room seemed to tilt around me. David had set up online banking for me after George died, insisting it would be easier for me. He'd created the passwords, showing me how to log in, though I rarely did. I'd trusted him to help me manage things while I grieved. What a fool I'd been. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mrs. Harmon?" I thanked the teller and hung up, my hands ice cold despite the warm spring day. I sat in George's chair, trying to make sense of what I'd just learned. David had been systematically draining my accounts for 3 years, taking over $130,000 of my savings. No wonder he'd been so eager to have me sell the house and move in with them. With my financial resources dwindling, the house was the last major asset left. As the shock wore off, memories surfaced like jagged rocks at low tide. David helping me fill out insurance claim forms after George's death. Margaret suggesting I didn't need to worry about reviewing bank statements. They'd handle everything. The new car they'd bought last year, Tyler's expensive private school, the home renovations, the luxury vacations, all paid for with my money. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Margaret. "Judith, just checking that you're okay. You left so early this morning." Her voice was honey-sweet, but I heard something new in it now. Calculation, not concern. "I'm fine," I said, surprised by how normal I sounded. "Just needed to start sorting through things here." "Oh, don't tire yourself out. David and I can handle all that. In fact, we were thinking we should start bringing some boxes over this weekend." "Not yet," I said firmly. "I need time to decide what I'm keeping." A pause. "Well, you know there won't be room for much, Judith. Your bedroom at our place isn't very large." "I'm aware," I said. "I'll manage." After we hung up, I sat in silence, my mind racing. What else had they taken from me besides money? I'd become increasingly isolated over the past 3 years. My old friends called less often. Had David intercepted messages? My sister Catherine had moved to Arizona after her husband died, and our calls had become infrequent. Had David discouraged her from visiting? I thought about my relationship with my daughter, Rachel. We'd grown distant after she moved to Oregon 15 years ago. Her calls had become less frequent after George died, and when she did call, David often answered, telling her I was resting or not up to talking. Had he been deliberately separating us? The last time Rachel visited, 2 years ago, David and Margaret had monopolized her time, scheduling family outings that tired me easily, leaving me behind to rest while they took Rachel sightseeing. When she tried to spend time alone with me, there was always some reason why it wasn't convenient. Rachel had seemed hurt when she left, perhaps thinking I didn't want to spend time with her. I'd written it off as the natural distance that comes with geography and time, but now I wondered, had David been driving a wedge between us deliberately? As darkness fell, I remained in George's study, the weight of my discoveries pressing down on me. I'd been so blind, so trusting. I'd let grief cloud my judgment, and my son had taken advantage of my vulnerability in the worst possible way. The magnitude of the betrayal was almost too much to bear. This wasn't just financial exploitation, it was the systematic dismantling of my independence, my connections, my very identity. In the growing darkness, I remembered Tyler throwing my cane into traffic, the cruel laughter, the stranger's kindness. I remembered Emma's concerned face and whispered offer of help. With sudden clarity, I knew I couldn't go through with the house sale. I couldn't move in with David and Margaret. I couldn't continue to be manipulated and exploited by my own family. But what could I do? Where could I go? Who would help me? As if in answer to my unspoken questions, the phone rang again. I answered warily. "Aunt Judith? It's Emma. I hope I'm not calling too late." Her familiar voice was like a lifeline in the darkness. "Emma," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "No, it's not too late at all. I've been worried about you," she said. "After seeing you yesterday, Aunt Judith, is everything okay? Really okay?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. The simple kindness in her voice nearly undid me. "No," I finally whispered. "Everything is not okay. Not at all." "I can meet you tomorrow," Emma said, her voice low and urgent. "Not at your house. David might drop by. There's a cafe called Rosie's on Maple Street, 10 in the morning." I agreed, feeling both relief and trepidation. After hanging up, I locked all the doors and sat in the darkness, wondering how I'd face David and Margaret now that I knew the truth. The thought of pretending everything was normal made me physically ill. The next morning, my phone rang twice before I left. David checking where I was going, Margaret reminding me we had an appointment with the realtor the following day. I lied smoothly, surprising myself. "Just meeting an old friend from church for coffee," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Rosie's cafe was small and cozy, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Emma was already waiting, a steaming mug between her hands. She stood when she saw me, her eyes scanning my face with concern. "Aunt Judith," she said, embracing me warmly. "I've been so worried." We settled into a quiet corner booth, and for a moment I couldn't speak. The simple kindness of her concern threatened to unravel me completely. "I think David has been stealing from me," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma's expression didn't register surprise, only a deep sadness that confirmed my worst fears. I was afraid of that, she said. Mom and I have suspected something was wrong for a long time, but whenever we tried to visit or call, there was always some reason why you weren't available. She reached across the table and took my hands in hers. Aunt Judith, what David and Margaret are doing. It's elder abuse, financial exploitation. It's not just wrong, it's criminal. The word abuse hit me like a physical blow. I'd never thought of myself as a victim, as someone who could be abused. I was a retired school teacher, a homeowner, a woman who had raised 2 children and helped raise several grandchildren. I was strong, independent, or at least I had been. I checked my accounts yesterday, I said, my voice steadying. He's taken over $130,000 in the past 3 years. Emma's grip on my hands tightened. That's theft, plain and simple. And now, they want me to sell my house and move in with them. So they can take everything, Emma finished grimly. We were interrupted by the waitress bringing my coffee. When she left, Emma leaned forward. Aunt Judith, this has to stop. You need to protect yourself and what's left of your assets. How? David has all my documents. He's been handling everything for so long. First, we need to get you a lawyer. Then a new bank account, one David doesn't know about. The practical steps Emma outlined made the situation feel less overwhelming. By the end of our meeting, I had the names of an elder law attorney and a financial advisor who specialized in helping seniors recover from financial exploitation. One more thing, Emma said as we prepared to leave. Have you spoken to Rachel recently? Like, actually spoken to her yourself? I felt a flush of shame. Not for months. David usually answers when she calls, says I'm resting. Emma's expression hardened. That's what I thought. Aunt Judith, Rachel has been trying to reach you. She's called my mom several times, worried because you never seem to be available when she calls. My heart clenched. My own daughter thinking I didn't want to speak to her. Another relationship David had manipulated. Call her, Emma urged. Today, if possible. Use my phone if you're worried about David seeing the call on your bill. I left, our meeting with a plan and something I hadn't felt in years, hope. I made an appointment with the attorney for the following day and called the bank to freeze any further transfers from my accounts. When I returned home, there was a message from David on my answering machine, his voice tight with controlled anger. Mom, the bank called me about some confusion with your accounts. Call me as soon as you get this. I didn't call him back. Instead, I used Emma's phone to call my daughter. Rachel answered on the second ring. Hello? Rachel? It's Mom. There was a moment of silence, then her voice choked with emotion. Mom, is that really you? Yes, sweetheart. It's me. My own voice wavered. Oh my God, Mom, I've been so worried. I've called and called, but David always says you're sleeping or not feeling well enough to talk. Are you okay? Are you sick? I'm not sick, Rachel. How could I explain? I've been manipulated, isolated, but I'm figuring things out now. What do you mean? Mom, what's going on? I told her everything. The financial exploitation, the pressure to sell my house, the increasing isolation, and finally, the incident with the cane that had opened my eyes. I'm coming home, Rachel said immediately. I can be there by tomorrow night. No, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. Not yet. I need to meet with the attorney first, understand my options. If you show up now, David will know something's wrong. Mom, I can't just sit here knowing what's happening. Please, Rachel. I need to handle this my way. Give me a few days to get my affairs in order, then come. I promise I'll be okay until then. After our call, I sat in George's study, thinking about everything that had happened. The anger I'd felt the night before had crystallized into something harder, more focused. David hadn't just stolen my money. He'd stolen years of my life, relationships with friends and family, my sense of self-worth. The next day, I met with Patricia Levine, the elder law attorney Emma had recommended. She was a formidable woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that I immediately trusted. What you're describing is textbook elder financial exploitation, she said after hearing my story. Unfortunately, it's far too common, especially when adult children have easy access to a parent's finances. What can I do? I asked. Legally, you have several options, Patricia explained. You can file a police report for the theft. You can sue to recover the stolen funds. You can seek a restraining order against David and his family. The thought of taking legal action against my own son made my stomach knot, despite everything he'd done. Patricia seemed to read my hesitation. You don't have to decide everything today, but there are immediate steps we should take to protect what's left of your assets. By the end of our meeting, Patricia had helped me draft a letter to the real estate agent withdrawing my house from the market. She'd also connected me with a financial advisor who would help me establish new accounts and begin the process of reclaiming control of my finances. As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of power. For too long, I'd been a passenger in my own life, watching as others made decisions for me. Now I was taking back the wheel. That evening, as I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw David standing on my porch, his expression thunderous. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. I opened the door just enough to see David clearly while keeping the security chain in place. A boundary I'd never needed with my own son before. Mom, what the hell is going on? His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. The bank called me about frozen accounts, and now the realtor says you've pulled the house off the market? Yes, I said simply, my voice steadier than I felt. Yes? He looked incredulous. That's all you have to say? We had an agreement, Mom. Everything was set. Why are you suddenly changing your mind? I studied his face, the face I'd loved since the moment he was born, now twisted with frustration that his plans were unraveling. I searched for any sign of the little boy who used to crawl into my lap for comfort, the teenager who'd confided his dreams to me, the young man who'd wept when his father taught him to tie a tie for his first job interview. I couldn't find him anymore. I've decided selling isn't the right decision for me right now, I said. This isn't like you, Mom. His tone shifted to concern, but it rang false. I'm worried about you. Are you feeling okay? Maybe we should have Dr. Matthews take a look at you. The implication was clear. If I wasn't complying, I must be mentally incompetent. Another manipulation tactic. I'm perfectly fine, David. Just reconsidering my options. He pressed his palm against the door, as if testing whether I might let him in. Look, if you're worried about something, we can talk about it. Whatever concerns you have, we can address them together. Not tonight, I said firmly. I'm tired. We can talk another time. His expression hardened. Is someone putting ideas in your head? Was it Emma? I saw you having coffee with her today. So, he'd been watching me. The realization sent a chill down my spine. Good night, David, I said, and closed the door despite his protests. I leaned against it, listening to him pound on the door for several minutes before finally giving up and leaving. My heart was racing, but beneath the fear was a strange sense of triumph. I'd stood my ground. The next morning, I received 3 calls from Margaret, all of which I let go to voicemail. Her messages grew increasingly concerned, then irritated, then outright angry. Judith, you're being completely irrational. David is beside himself with worry. Call us immediately. We're only trying to help you. This behavior is very concerning. If you continue like this, we might need to consider having you evaluated. Fine. Be stubborn. But don't think this changes anything. We've already discussed your living situation with Tyler's college counselor. He's counting on that money. The last message confirmed what I'd already suspected. They'd been planning to use the proceeds from my house sale to fund Tyler's education. I spent the day meeting with Stephen Walsh, the financial advisor Patricia had recommended. He was a kind-eyed man in his 50s who specialized in helping seniors recover from financial exploitation. The good news is we can stop the bleeding, he told me after reviewing my financial situation. The challenging part will be recovering what's been taken. I nodded, trying to focus on solutions rather than dwelling on David's betrayal. We need to secure what's left, Stephen continued. I recommend opening new accounts at a different bank entirely, one where David has no relationship. By the end of our meeting, I had opened new accounts, changed the passwords on all my online banking, and arranged for my Social Security and pension payments to be redirected. Stephen had also helped me apply for a new credit card that David wouldn't know about. What about my house? I asked. The sale is off for now, but David has all the documents, the deed, insurance papers, everything. We can get copies, Stephen assured me. The important thing is that you're the legal owner. As long as you don't sign anything, they can't sell it out from under you. That evening, I sat in George's study making lists. Things I needed to do, people I needed to call, documents I needed to recover. I was organizing my resistance, methodically reclaiming pieces of my life. The doorbell rang again, and I tensed, expecting David or Margaret. Instead, through the peephole, I saw Emma with an older woman who looked remarkably like George, his sister, my sister-in-law Helen. I opened the door, and Helen immediately enveloped me in a warm hug. "Judith, I've been so worried," she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Emma told me everything. The three of us sat in my living room, and I felt a weight lifting as I shared the full story with Helen. She'd always been more like a sister than an in-law, but we'd grown distant. After George died, another relationship David had managed to disrupt. George would be furious, Helen said, her eyes flashing with the same intensity her brothers had when he was angry. Using his mother's grief to steal from her? Isolating her from family? That boy needs a serious wake-up call. I'm not sure. He's capable of seeing what he's done is wrong, I admitted. He seems to genuinely believe he's entitled to my money. Then he needs to face consequences, Helen said firmly. Have you considered legal action? I'm still processing everything, I said. Right now, I'm focused on protecting what I have left and figuring out my next steps. Well, you're not alone anymore, Helen declared. I'm staying at Emma's for the next week, and I'm here to help however I can. After they left, I felt stronger. The network of support forming around me was a powerful antidote to the isolation David had engineered. The next day brought another development. Rachel called to say she'd booked a flight and would arrive in 3 days. Are you sure? I asked. You have your job, the kids. Mom, this is more important, she said firmly. The kids are old enough to manage with their dad for a week, and I have vacation time saved up. I'm coming. That afternoon, I made a difficult but necessary decision. After consulting with Patricia, I changed the locks on my house. The locksmith, an older gentleman named Frank, worked quickly and discreetly. My son lost his key, I explained, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Frank just nodded. Happens all the time, ma'am. As he was finishing, a car screeched into my driveway, Margaret's silver SUV. She stormed up the walkway, her face flushed with anger. What do you think you're doing? She demanded, glaring at the locksmith. Changing my locks, I replied calmly. Why would you do that without telling us? We need access to your house, Judith. What if there's an emergency? Then you can call me, I said. Or 911 if necessary. Margaret's eyes narrowed. This isn't like you, Judith. David is really concerned. About your mental state. These erratic decisions, the secrecy, it's not healthy. I appreciate your concern, I said, not backing down. But I'm perfectly fine. We'll see what Dr. Matthews has to say about that, she muttered, turning back toward her car. David's making an appointment for you. After she left, Frank gave me a knowing look. Family troubles? I nodded, too tired to maintain the pretense. Been there, he said kindly. Stay strong, ma'am. That night, I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by silence, sipping tea and thinking about the days ahead. David wouldn't give up easily. The more control I reclaimed, the harder he would fight to regain it. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I was angry, hurt, disappointed, but not afraid. With each small act of resistance, I was rebuilding my sense of self, remembering the woman I had been before grief and manipulation had diminished me. As I prepared for bed, my phone rang. Tyler's name flashed on the caller ID. I hesitated, then answered. Grandma? His voice sounded small, uncertain, so different from his usual arrogant tone. Can we talk? Grandma, I need to talk to you about school, Tyler said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I sat down slowly, bracing myself. What about school, Tyler? Dad and Mom told me you promised to pay for my college. They said we had a plan, but now you're backing out. His voice rose slightly. I've already been accepted to Berkeley. If I don't get the money, I can't go. Closed my eyes, processing this new manipulation. They had promised my grandson something I'd never agreed to, then sent him to make me feel guilty. Tyler, did I ever personally promise to pay for your education? I asked gently. A pause. Well, no. But Dad said, your father made promises using my money without my knowledge or consent, I said, keeping my voice calm. I never agreed to fund your education. But Grandma, this is my future we're talking about. Now he sounded angry. I've Worked so hard for this. You can't just ruin everything because you're having some kind of senior moment. There it was again. The implication that if I wasn't complying, something must be wrong with my mind. Tyler, I said firmly, I understand you're disappointed, but this situation is between your father and me. He made promises with money that wasn't his to give. So you're just going to let me fail? His voice cracked. I thought you loved me. The emotional blackmail was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Instead, I took a deep breath. I do love you, Tyler. I do love you, Tyler. But that doesn't mean I'm obligated to give you $200,000 for college. There are scholarships, loans, work-study programs, many ways to fund your education. This is so unfair, he exploded. Dad said you're being manipulated by Aunt Emma and Rachel. He said you're not thinking clearly. Your father is wrong, I said simply. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Whatever, Tyler muttered. I'll tell Dad you're not budging. After he hung up, I sat in the darkness, wondering if there was any way to salvage my relationship with my grandson. Had David and Margaret poisoned him completely, or was there still hope he might someday understand? The next morning, I woke to multiple missed calls from David and a text message that chilled me to the bone. This has gone far enough. We're coming over at 10 to discuss your mental health evaluation. Dr. Matthews has concerns about your recent behavior. They were escalating, trying to declare me incompetent. Patricia had warned me this might happen, that financial abusers often turn to questions of mental capacity when their victims start to resist. I called Patricia immediately. Don't let them in, she advised. Don't sign anything. Record the conversation. If you can. I'm sending my paralegal over. She should arrive before they do. True to her word, a young woman named Jessica arrived at 9:45, introducing herself as Patricia's paralegal and explaining she was there to witness the interaction. We barely had time to settle in the living room before David's car pulled into the driveway. Margaret and Dr. Matthews, our family physician for over 20 years, were with him. I positioned my phone on the side table, recording app running as Patricia had suggested, then took a deep breath and opened the door. Mom, David began without preamble, we're very concerned about your recent behavior. Dr. Matthews is here to evaluate you. Dr. Matthews looked uncomfortable but stepped forward. Judith, your family has noticed some concerning changes. Mood swings, paranoia, irrational financial decisions. These could be signs of cognitive decline. I'm not allowing an evaluation today, I said firmly. And I'm not inviting you in. David's face reddened. This isn't a request, Mom. We're worried about you. Mrs. Harmon is within her rights to refuse. Jessica spoke up from behind me. As her legal representative, I advise against any evaluation without her attorney present. Legal representative? David's eyes narrowed. What the hell is going on here? Mom, who is this person? My name is Jessica Chen, paralegal for Patricia Levine, elder law attorney, she said crisply. Mrs. Harmon has retained our services. You've hired a lawyer? Margaret looked genuinely shocked. Judith, why would you do that unless you're trying to hide something? I'm protecting myself, I said, and I'd like you all to leave now. Dr. Matthews cleared his throat. Perhaps we should reschedule when things are calmer. No, David snapped. This is ridiculous. Mom, you need help. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking very clearly, I countered. Clear enough to check my bank accounts and discover you've taken over $130,000 from me in the past 3 years. David paled slightly but recovered quickly. That's absurd. I've been helping you manage your finances, not stealing from you. Transferring money from my accounts to yours without my knowledge or consent is theft, David. You authorized me to handle your finances, he shouted, facade cracking. After Dad died, you couldn't even pay a bill without crying. I authorized you to help me, not rob me blind, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Not isolate me from my friends and family, not trick me into selling my home so you could take the proceeds. Margaret stepped forward, her voice honeyed with false concern. Judith, you're confused. David has only ever had your best interests at heart. My best interests? I laughed bitterly. Was it in my best interest when Tyler threw my cane into traffic and you all laughed? Was it in my best interest when you planned to use the money from my house to pay for Tyler's college without my consent? Dr. Matthews looked increasingly uncomfortable. Perhaps I should come back another time. No, David insisted, grabbing the doctor's arm. She needs to be evaluated now. She's paranoid, making wild accusations. Jessica stepped fully into view. Dr. Matthews, I should inform you that attempting to force an evaluation on an unwilling patient who shows no signs of immediate danger to herself or others could be considered malpractice. Additionally, this entire conversation is being recorded. Doctor. Matthews pulled his arm free from David's grip. I'm leaving. This is inappropriate. He turned to me. Judith, I apologize. I was given a very different impression of the situation. After he left, David's mask fell completely. You think you're so clever getting lawyers involved? This isn't over, Mom. Actually, it is, I said, surprising myself with my calmness. I've frozen my accounts, I've changed my locks, I've withdrawn my house from the market, and tomorrow my daughter Rachel arrives from Oregon. Rachel? Margaret looked stricken. Why is she coming? Because I asked her to, I said simply. David stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You have no idea what you're doing. We're family. You can't just cut us off. Watch me, I replied, and closed the door. Inside, my legs finally gave way, and I sank onto the sofa. Jessica sat beside me, her expression sympathetic. You did incredibly well, she said. Patricia will be impressed. After she left, I called Emma to update her, then made another important call to my sister Catherine in Arizona. I'd been avoiding reaching out, ashamed to admit how completely I'd been manipulated, but it was time to rebuild all my connections. Judith? Catherine sounded surprised, but pleased. I've been trying to reach you for months. As I explained everything, her shock turned to outrage. I'm coming out there, she declared. I'll book a flight today. By evening, my quiet house had become command central for what Emma jokingly called Operation Liberation. Rachel would arrive tomorrow, Catherine the day after. Helen was already in town. For the first time in years, I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about my well-being. That night, I stood in George's study, running my fingers over his books, his desk, the life we'd built together. I wish you were here, I whispered to the empty room, but I think I'm doing what you would want. In the stillness, I could almost hear his voice. You're stronger than you know, Judy. And for the first time in 3 years, I truly believed it. The airport reunion with Rachel brought tears to both our eyes. My daughter, now 45 with strands of gray in her dark hair, ran to embrace me as if she were still a little girl. Mom, she whispered, holding me tight. I've missed you so much. The drive home was filled with 3 years of catching up, stories about her children, her work, her life that David had kept from me. She asked careful questions about what had happened, listening without judgment as I explained how gradually, almost imperceptibly, I'd lost control of my own life. I should have tried harder to reach you, she said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I knew something wasn't right, but David always had explanations. He said you were grieving, that you needed space, that too many visitors tired you. Out. He isolated me very effectively, I acknowledged, but that's over now. When we arrived home, Emma and Helen were waiting with lunch prepared. Catherine would arrive the next day. The house that had been so empty for so long was filling with laughter and love again. That afternoon, Patricia came by with news. The recording from yesterday is excellent evidence, she said. Combined with the bank records showing the unauthorized transfers, we have a strong case for financial exploitation. What are my options? I asked. We can file a police report, which could lead to criminal charges against David, she explained. Or we can pursue civil action to recover the stolen funds, or both. The thought of my son facing criminal charges still made my heart ache, despite everything. Patricia seemed to understand my hesitation. You don't have to decide immediately, she said gently. But I do recommend we send a formal demand letter for the return of the misappropriated funds. It's a necessary first step, regardless of what you decide later. I agreed to the letter, hoping against hope that David might come to his senses when confronted with the evidence. That evening, as Rachel and I sorted through old photographs in the living room, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Tyler standing alone on the porch, shoulders slumped. Rachel tensed. Do you want me to send him away? I shook my head. No, I want to hear what he has to say. I opened the door, maintaining a safe distance. Tyler looked younger somehow, more like the boy I remembered than the cruel young man who had thrown my cane into traffic. Grandma, he said, his voice hoarse. Can I come in, please? I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him enter. Rachel watched him warily. as he followed me to the living room. "I'm sorry," he blurted out as soon as we sat down. "About the cane, about everything. I've been horrible to you." His apology surprised me. "Why now, Tyler?" He stared at his hands. "After Dad and Dr. Matthews came here yesterday, they had a huge fight. Dad was yelling about lawyers and accusations, and Dr. Matthews said he wouldn't be part of trying to declare someone incompetent when they clearly weren't." Tyler swallowed hard. Then Dad started ranting about how everything was falling apart. Apart? How they needed your money for my college fund because they'd spent all their savings on the house renovation and Mom's shopping. Rachel made a disgusted sound. Tyler looked at her, then back at me. "I didn't know, Grandma. I swear I didn't know. They were taking your money. Dad always said you wanted to help, that you insisted on paying for things because you had so much from Grandpa's insurance." "And you believed that?" Rachel asked skeptically. "Why wouldn't I?" Tyler's voice cracked. "They're my parents. I trusted them. I studied my grandson's face, searching for signs of deception. All I saw was confusion and shame." "What do you want from me now, Tyler?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," he said quickly. "I mean, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or help with college. I needed you to know I'm sorry, and that I didn't understand what was really happening." I wasn't ready to fully trust him, but his remorse seemed genuine. "Thank you for the apology," I said carefully. "It means a lot." After Tyler left, Rachel and I sat in silence for a while. "Do you believe him?" she finally asked. "I want to," I admitted. "He's young, and he was raised by David and Margaret. He might not have understood the full extent of what they were doing." "Maybe," Rachel conceded. "Just be careful, Mom. This family has hurt you enough." The next day brought Catherine's arrival and a formal response from David to Patricia's demand letter, a hostile denial of any wrongdoing and threats of a countersuit for defamation if we proceeded. "He's bluffing," Patricia assured me when I called her. "The evidence is overwhelming. He knows it, but he's hoping you'll back down." I wasn't backing down. With my sister, daughter, sister-in-law, and niece surrounding me, I felt stronger than I had in years. Together, we worked out a plan for my future. One that didn't include moving in with David or selling my home. 2 weeks later, after careful consideration, I made my decision. I wouldn't pursue criminal charges against David, but I would file a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about justice and ensuring I had the resources to maintain my independence. "Are you sure?" Rachel asked when I told her my decision. "After everything he's done?" "I'm sure," I said. "I don't want revenge. I just want what's rightfully mine." The lawsuit progressed quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the possibility of criminal charges if we took the case to the police, David agreed to a settlement, returning $120,000 of the stolen funds and signing a legally binding agreement to cease all contact unless I initiated it. I never heard from Margaret again. Tyler occasionally sent tentative text messages, which I answered warmly but cautiously. Our relationship was fragile, but I wasn't ready to give up on my grandson entirely. 6 months after that terrible day when Tyler threw my cane into traffic, my life had transformed. Catherine had decided to sell her Arizona home and move back to be near me. Rachel visited every few months, and we spoke on the phone several times a week. I'd reconnected with old friends and even joined a book club at the local library. My house remained mine, filled with George's books and our shared memories. I'd converted the spare bedroom into an art studio, finally pursuing the painting I'd always wanted to try, but never found time for during my teaching career. One sunny afternoon, as I sat in my garden with Catherine, I received an unexpected email from Berkeley University's financial aid office. They were notifying me that a new scholarship had been established in my name, the Judith Harmon Resilience Scholarship, dedicated to supporting students who were caring for elderly family members. The anonymous donor had funded 5 full scholarships, with a note explaining that the program was meant to recognize the importance of respecting and honoring our elders. I knew immediately who was behind it. Rachel confirmed my suspicion later. She had used part of her inheritance from George, which David had never been able to touch, to establish the scholarship in my name. "I wanted something good to come from all this," she explained. "A way to honor you and help prevent other families from experiencing what we did." That evening, sitting in George's study surrounded by his books and the life we'd built together, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before his death. The pain of David's betrayal would never completely fade, but it no longer defined me. I picked up a framed photo of George and me on our 40th anniversary, his arm around my waist, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. "I made it, George," I whispered. I found my way back. 3 days after Tyler threw my cane into the road and mockingly told me I had to earn my coffee by retrieving it, his university fund was indeed empty, but the money had returned to where it belonged, with me. I was gone from their manipulative grasp, rebuilding a life of dignity, purpose, and genuine connection. And for the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be.